It is perfectly fine for you to develop for yourself cultural standards to live by and to worship by. What is not okay is for you to pass that cultural standard off as a biblical mandate if you do not have an objective scriptural reference. Cultural versus scriptural. Let's talk about it today on this episode of Justified by Score.
Galileo stood against the accepted viewpoint of his day. The church had decided that the Earth was the center of our solar system. Galileo proved that the view was untrue. In fact, our planet revolves around the sun. The church of Galileo's day tried to suppress his views. Galileo, like other great individuals, stood against the crowd and refused to believe the accepted scientific narrative of his day.
Which standard are you going to let rule in your life? The cultural standard or the truth of Scripture? I'm not saying that cultural standards are wrong. I am simply stating that they do not, and you should not hold cultural standards above scriptural standards. And when faced with the two, scriptural standards absolutely take precedence. We all develop cultural standards. Going to an upscale nightclub or a restaurant, they have a dress code or a standard attire they require for you to enter. They have the authority to set the standard for their place of business, but they do not have the authority to force that same dress code or standard on individuals that are going to an NFL game. Why? Because that club owner or restaurant owners do not have the authority over the NFL facility. At an NFL game, it is cultural for people to wear sports gear. It's customary that you wear the home team's attire, but it's not law. Customary. And it is probably a whole lot safer that you do that, especially going to a Raiders game. It's wiser, just wiser. It is also not necessarily wrong to wear like 6-inch red bottom heels and a tight dress in the NFL game either. It may not be wise, but it's your world. Do what you do. Most people going to look at you and think that you're there to get chose for cuffing season. But it's your world, yo. In like fashion, do not impute your authority where it does not apply. If you think that you have to wear a suit and tie to church and hard bottoms, that is your opinion. Unless you have an objective biblical reference that supports your standard, it is only your opinion.
And you will respect my authority.
You do not have authority over others beyond the scope in which God has established.
And you will respect my authority.
Because these things are not culturally accepted does not mean they are objectively wrong. Do not impute your authority where there is none objectively established. Now, let's cover some examples. Have some fun. It has become standard in the African American church to refer to the pastor's wife as First Lady. Is that cultural or scriptural? Cultural. Is it wrong to do it then? No. That is how the pastor has established order in his local body, then I believe it is respectful to address as such. But if a pastor would say that all churches have to do this way, I would have to see an objective scriptural standard to support that. And as I suspect, no one can. You overstep your authority by saying everyone has to do it. Another one, you have to wear your Sunday's best to church. Is that cultural or scriptural? Cultural. Whereas it may be cultural standard, it does not have scriptural foundation to back it. Even the idea of Sunday's best is subjective. Since it is subjective, then it is only your opinion. Wearing white gloves during communion. Cultural, scriptural. Cultural. Although I understand the sentiment and the reasons surrounding the practice, because there's a lack of scriptural evidence to support this practice, it is simply a cultural practice. Hear me correctly, though. I'm not saying that the practice is wrong or sinful. I am simply stating that it is a cultural practice that we partake in to show honor and respect, but it is not a biblical mandate. Chairs in the pulpit and the pastor having to sit in the pulpit. Cultural or scriptural? Cultural. There's not a single pastor that would support that the pastor has to sit in the chair in the pulpit area. It is strictly a cultural practice. Is that to say that the practice is wrong? No. But we have to understand that that practice is cultural, and we shouldn't make it a biblical mandate if the Bible has not explicitly stated so. Now, here's a fun one. The role of deacons in the church. Is it cultural or scriptural? Before I answer this, let's talk about some practices of deacons in the church currently, like deacons doing devotion, requiring a seat in order to be seen, and being the only ones to handle communion, and things like that. There are two distinct roles or offices that have been established for the New Testament church. That is the role of elders and deacons. The Bible is explicit in the qualifications for each office, as well as the roles and responsibilities for each. Elders or pastors teach or preach the word and shepherd the souls that are underneath them. That's Ephesians 4:11, 1 Timothy 3:2, 5:17, and Titus 1:9. Deacons, too, have a crucial and critical role in the life and the health of the local church, but their role is different than elders. The role of the deacons is to take care of the physical and logistical needs of the church so that the elders can concentrate on their primary calling. With that definition, I will allow you to decide if the role of deacon is practiced culturally or scripturally in your local body. Remember, it is okay to have cultural practices, but remember there is a significant difference between your cultural practices and a scriptural mandate. Too often we are attempting to force others to follow our personal standard of right and wrong, and I'm sorry, not sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you are not the author or the arbiter of what is right or wrong. God is, and unless God has said so, it's only your opinion. In closing, I want to state this. Cultural standards are not wrong in and of themselves. It is when we begin to hold them and treat them as if they are biblical mandates. That is where we come into error. Also, when you are faced with cultural standards that are contradictory to biblical mandates, which one will you hold to? Are you going to allow the pressure of the world and especially of the church to coerce you to hold to cultural standards? Or will you stand up to the culture and stand up for what is right, what is scriptural, and what is true? It is a difficult task. And in the current culture and climate, the pressure to concede is greater than ever. This is why it is important to arm yourself with information. And this is a perfect place to get that information from. This has been another episode of Justified by Score, and I hope you have been gleaning and learning and have been gaining something from this. If you have, please make sure to like, subscribe, and absolutely share this with other individuals who may benefit from it. And until next time, Lord willing, peace and grace.